My name is Delana Arnold with the Georgian Bay Biosphere. Today we are going to be leading a biosphere walk on the Humphrey Nature Trails in partnership with Seguin Township. Before we begin our hike, we would first like to acknowledge the land. The Georgian Bay Biosphere is situated within the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and located on Anishinaabe territory. We are very grateful to work with First Nations and Métis communities in this area. Our organization, under UNESCO, acknowledges the rights of Indigenous people in this territory and works towards respectful and reciprocal relationships as we are all caretakers of the land. At present, the Humphrey Nature Trail is open to pedestrians only and is being maintained by township staff as usual. Please continue to practice physical distancing by keeping 2 meters distance with others at all times.
The Humphrey Nature Trails in Seguin feature 8 kilometers of eco-friendly trails leading visitors into temperate forests beside creeks, overlooking wetlands, and scaling beautiful waterfalls. The trails are perfect for hiking, biking, cross-country skiing, and snowshoeing. The trails can often be rough and muddy in the off-season, so be sure you wear appropriate clothing and hiking shoes. Each loop on the Humphrey Nature Trail leads into another loop. The trail features a warming barn, which is open daily in the winter to get ready to eat snacks or to warm up. Parking and access is located in the village of Humphrey, off of Seguin Place Drive, directly behind the Humphrey Fire Hall. A printable Humphrey Nature Trails map is available on the Seguin Township's website.
So right now on the trail we're seeing lots of spring ephemerals or early blooming flowers, and in front of me is a great one. We've often heard of lily of the valley. It's common in people's backyards. The lily of the valley that you normally see is actually introduced from Europe. This lily of the valley is the one that is native to North America. You find it all across Canada and the northern United States. Now, what's interesting too is right next to it is this beautiful flower, a lot less common than the wild lily of the valley. This is called blue bead lily, and as its name suggests, when these flowers go to fruit, the fruits are actually going to look like blue beads. It's very similar to blueberries, except they're a little bit darker. They're round and shiny. Unlike blueberries, though, they're actually mildly toxic. Now, blue bead lily is very slow to spread. You can't transplant it at all, and the berries won't actually germinate until the second fall. That way they can spread a little bit further in that time through insect movement and things like that. So blue bead lily and our wild lily of the valley. So next to me right now, another stunning spring ephemeral, a spring flower, the pink lady slipper. Not a very common species that we see in this area. It's actually in the orchid family. So something really interesting about the pink lady slippers, a complicated flower has a complicated feeding system. The roots are actually dependent on a specific type of fungus. They have what's called a symbiotic relationship where they work together, and without that fungus, the lady slipper wouldn't be able to absorb nutrients. Something else that's really interesting, you can see how complex the flower is. The folds of the flower are designed in such a way that when an insect, a pollinator, enters it, it actually cannot leave the same way that it came in. So what this forces this little insect or this pollinator to do is walk through the flower and collect as much pollen as possible on its body before it exits. So that's one way the lady slipper has essentially got that pollinator to do a lot of work for it. Now, something else, the seeds of the lady slipper, once they germinate, it will be 10 years before they actually get to this flowering stage. It's an incredibly complicated plant with an amazing life cycle, and it's one that you should never pick or try to transplant. The pink lady slipper. rock barren, and here of course we can find wild blueberries. Now, wild blueberries we often think of as being eaten by black bears, but there's actually dozens of wildlife species that like to eat wild blueberries. Mammals from deer all the way down to chipmunks and mice, and over a dozen kinds of birds. Even things like wild turkeys, chickadees, robins have been known to snack on some blueberries. So next time you find a patch of wild blueberries and you harvest a couple for yourself, be sure to leave lots of them for the wildlife. They're a major food source for wildlife.
So we've stopped here because in the woodland behind me we can hear a hermit thrush, which is one of our common species of thrush around here. Now what's really interesting about thrushes is that they have eyes that are a little bit larger relative to their body size compared to other bird species. Now it's not as extreme as like an owl, let's say, but it's still a little bit bigger than, let's say, a chickadee or something like that. And so that's really useful for a thrush to have larger eyes, because they like to live in the forest where it's usually kind of dim and shady, and they're oftentimes down low near the ground where there's not as much light. So having larger eyes allows more light to be collected, and it helps them see better in a dim environment. These are eastern tent caterpillars. The way we can tell is because they're intense. We've stopped because we can hear a red-eyed vireo calling. Red-eyed vireos are kind of sneaky birds. They like to stay way up high in the treetops, so oftentimes the best way to identify them is by their song. And if you're listening to a red-eyed vireo song, it just goes on and on and on. In fact, a male red-eyed vireo can sing more than 20,000 songs in a day. So if you're trying to identify a red-eyed vireo song, listen for the bird that keeps going on and on and on. It's sort of a clear, whistled song that often rises up or goes down at the end. It's almost as though it's having a conversation with itself, going, "How are you? I'm fine. How are the kids? They're good. What time is it? It's 10 a.m. On and on. And so that's one of the best ways to identify it. Once you hear it, then you can try using your binoculars to see it. We've stopped here because we hear another type of bird. This time we're listening to a black-throated blue warbler, and they have a call that goes zoo, zoo, zee, and it rises up a little bit. Now, black-throated blue warblers are really beautiful small songbirds because they have blue-colored feathers. But I say that, they don't actually have blue-colored feathers because there's no such thing as blue pigment in bird feathers. So normally with orange or yellow feathers, those are due to pigments in the bird's feathers. Those are molecules that give it that color. But birds with blue feathers, like a black-throated blue warbler, that coloration just comes from the structure of the feathers and the way that the light bounces off of it. So depending on how you're looking at the feathers, in some light it'll look very blue, in other light it will look more flat, more grayish. And again, that's because the blue color comes from the structure of the feather when the light reflects off. So we just found an American toad hopping across the trail. American toads are the only species of toad that we have in this part of Ontario. And one thing you might notice about toads is that sometimes you find them pretty far from water, which is different from frogs, because frogs, they're often near water. And the reason for this is because toads have thicker skin that helps prevent them from drying out. So they can hop around far from water. In fact, the only time they really need to be in water is during breeding season when they're laying eggs in water. After that's done, they go up on land and they hop around on land. They're totally awesome.
We hope that you've enjoyed this biosphere walk on the Humphrey Nature Trails with us. We look forward to seeing you out here again with us soon.